And in the spirit of Africanness, I can tell you, it is not going to be easy. There are going to be many roadblocks. We will rise and fall. We will rise and fall. We will rise and fall. But ultimately, we will stand, and history will remember us as those who rise and rise and rise.
We all know that Africa is one of the richest continents on earth. But yet today, we're still talking about, the poorest countries in Africa, and those that are still suffering from malnutrition and other many challenges that should have been avoided as early as 1960 or even earlier. Talk about countries like South Sudan, Burundi, the Central African Republic, and many other countries that still continue to suffer from insecurities and bad governance that has remained these countries to be extremely poor. But how is it possible? How is it that countries that are still sitting under gold and many other numerous resources like cobalt, like uranium, like diamonds, and fertile lands, and a lot of oil reserves are at the bottom of the world's wealthiest rankings? I mean, how? At Africaismarwa, we have said that it is now time for Africa to wake up, and many great Pan-Africanists like PLO Lumumba, Dr. Arikana Chihombori have continuously told Africa to wake up, because it is the highest time we stop talking about even poverty, because Africa is rich. But anyway, this is Africaismarwa, and before we even start, I would love you to take 3 seconds of this video to just hit on that subscribe button, and don't forget to share this video wide and to leave us a comment and a like. Today, I want us to explore some of the uncomfortable but very necessary realities and questions. Why is Africa poor, despite all the unimaginable and unmeasurable riches that we have in Africa? Stay tuned after the end as we begin. Well, according to the latest IMF 2025 report, there are some countries that have had great projections in terms of, their economies, and this has been done comparing the GDP and the current prices in $1 million, and we're talking about countries like Egypt, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Angola, and Ghana, which are among the top 10. But this is not where the problem is, because my main focus from that report is I want us to look at what are some of the top 10 poorest countries that still remain behind in terms of the GDP per capita as per the IMF report, because these countries still remain poor, yet they have a lot of resources, and this is why we need to have much attention into these countries. The first country that we're looking at, the far bottom, is Southern Sudan. I mean, yeah, we can give them an excuse that it is Africa's youngest nation, but it is rich in oil and still devastated with a lot of civil war. Dreams of prosperity have far long crushed under the weight of political conflict and corruption, but the spirit of the people remains unbroken. So South Sudan is at a GDP of around $960, and this is way too low. The second country we are looking at is Burundi. I mean, we all know how Burundi has been suffering, and it is the smallest country that we have in Eastern Africa, but it is blessed with fertile soil and hard-working citizens. I mean, if you look at their agriculture, they should have been doing well, but it's still trapped under the cycle of political instability, and poverty still continues to align in Burundi. And Burundi's future actually hinges on genuine leadership and peace. So Burundi is at 1009 GDP. Unbelievably, the third country we are looking at is Central African Republic, with a GDP per capita of 1314. We all know that Central African Republic sits at a vast deposit of gold, diamond, and uranium, yet still remains the poorest. But why? It's because of the endless foreign meddling and eternal wars, and the weak government structures that they still continue to have. and they've had armed groups that have displaced more than 1.3 million people, and about 66.3% have gone down to the poverty rate. I mean, this shouldn't be happening. These people have no access to water or school, as per the World Bank report in 2024, which is extremely sad, because looking at the resources that they have, they should be doing better. The other country we're looking at is Malawi. I mean, the heart of Africa. How can it be the warmest heart of Africa and yet still remains poor, with a GDP of 1,765? Malawi is such a beautiful and peaceful country, but deeply affected by economic struggles, health crisis, and dependency on foreign aid. And as it stands, Malawi has a great potential, but still remains one of the poorest countries in Africa and lies within the top 10, which is ideal. Very, very sad. We also have Mozambique in top 10 with a GDP of 1,787. I mean, Mozambique, with the gas and mineral riches that has recently been discovered, it still remains poor and still thrive under poverty. I mean, all these natural resources, but filled with disasters, conflict, corruption, and poor governance, has continued to make a bad use of these resources and has kept Mozambique poor. The other country we are looking at is Somalia, and we know Somalia has been experiencing a lot of instability and bad governance. It's sitting at a GDP of 1,900, and we all understand why Somalia is here, and it's really sad. For a very long time there's been no strategy in place, and to a country that was once the Horn of Africa, and which had a very, very big potential and massive contribution to Africa, but decades of foreign interference, civil war, and terrorism have actually taken a heavy toll to it, and still remains under the top 10 poorest countries in Africa. Sadly, the next country is Democratic Republic of Congo with a GDP of 1,908. I mean, we all know that DRC is possibly the richest country in natural resources on earth. I mean, what can't we find in DRC? Talk about cobalt, talk about diamonds, talk about gold, talk about copper. I mean, name them all. Name all the resources that you can get from this beautiful country, but still remains the poorest country in Africa and still lies under the top 10 poorest countries in Africa. I mean, how? DRC is actually a symbol of how foreign exploitation can bleed a nation to dry, and we know the latest wars that have been happening and how DRC haven't rested yet with all this interference, and we're hoping that one day DRC will rise again. Well, as we wind up to the top 10, we also have Liberia, which has a GDP of 2003. I mean, Liberia, we all know that it wasn't colonized, so we shouldn't even be talking about Liberia when it comes to poverty, because we believe in that they should have been independent, but still remains the Africa's oldest republic, because it was found with hope and lots of liberation, but now still faces challenges of poverty and poor governance, which has resulted to the failure of bad infrastructure and brutal civil wars that has continued to make Liberia to be among the top 10 poorest countries in Africa. Last but not least, among the top 10 countries, poorest countries in Africa, we have Madagascar with a GDP of 2062. Madagascar actually very situated, an island in the African continent with a very unique biodiversity and natural beauty, but political instability and environmental degradation have dragged Madagascar into economic limbo and lots of hardship that has still kept it among the poorest countries in Africa. Closing down to the list of top 10 poorest countries in Africa is Niger. I mean, with just a GDP of 2084, Niger is very rich in uranium, and it's a very strategic location, but the bad source of poverty and political groups and exploitation of its natural wealth has actually continued to keep it poor, and recently rising in global headlines after rejecting external influence has given hope with a very great expectation that the Sahel state leaders, with the influence that they are having to make sure that the country becomes independent, and maybe in future we're going to be talking about a very, very new Niger. But at the moment, it still remains under the top 10 poorest countries in Africa. Well, we have seen all these margins and how these countries still remain poor, but they have a lot of resources with them. And we all know that Africa doesn't lack wealth. I mean, Africa is such a resourceful continent, but Africa lacks ownership of her wealth. And until we control our minerals, until we manage our governments with integrity and unite as one people, the list of poor countries will not change, because this is something that we should take the mandate. And that is why we see everyone is proud of Ibrahim Traore and the other Sahel state leaders who have been trying to convince everyone in Africa that a lot of money is going out of Africa as from the resources, and we really need to take the mandate of ensuring that we run our governance in a very clear structure, so that what belongs to us actually makes a difference. And this is why I will continue supporting Ibrahim Traore and other Sahel state leaders. The countries we mentioned have more than just numbers. I mean, behind those figures are millions of Africans living without clean water, electricity, good healthcare, and quality education. But this conversation has to change, because with all the minerals that we've been having and all the money that have been going out, then it means that we need to take care of our oil, we have to take care of our agriculture, we have to take care of our human talent. And with all that, Africa won't remain poor, because we know where the exploitation is coming from. And the painful truth is that exploitation of our resources has been one of the biggest challenge for decades. Africa's resources have been extracted not for Africans, but for outsiders. I mean, for how long will we continue allowing the foreign companies to own the oil rigs, the diamond mines, and even the fertile farmlands? Our raw materials keeps on being exported cheaply and imported back as an expensive finished product, and this has to stop. We have to stop corruption and mismanagement. We know all the puppets that we have in terms of in the name of leaders. I mean, they have for far long betrayed our people, and they have prioritized foreign interest and personal wealth over national development. So we need to stop them. We need to stop the traps of debt and neo-colonialism. Institutions like the IMF and World Bank, which have actually been giving us this report, have kept African nations in cycle of debt and forcing policies that benefit foreign investors and not us. I mean, we have to stop all the wars and instability. Many conflicts across Africa are not just homegrown. I mean, we weren't fighting before and we were living in harmony. So why are we still fighting amongst ourselves? Because this is war that have been fueled by foreign interests who want to control our natural wealth. And if we continue fighting, then we can't realize our potential. And this is why we have to call every African to actually awaken. We know how Ibrahim Traore and other Pan-African leaders like Sankara, Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah have been trying to tell us that we need to unite and we need to wake up, so that we can actually utilize some of these resources. We shouldn't be talking about poverty at the moment for Africa. So Africa, please wake up. Each and every African has to take the mandate. We must remember the spirit of heroes. I've mentioned them: Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, and today's young revolutionaries like Ibrahim Traore. They have continuously understood that political freedom without economic freedom is meaningless. And we will continue to call for African unity. I mean, is the African Union listening? Because we need Africa to be united. Well, it's Africans, you and me, has to take the mandate, and we must rise to take the ownership of our destiny. And this is why Africaismarwa continues to keep on bringing this conversation, so that everyone is able to keep our leaders in check, in terms of our minerals, in terms of our industries, in terms of our education, in terms of our agriculture, so that we can unite the continent and collectively have a strengthened continent. It doesn't just stop here. Indeed, it doesn't just talk about the top 10 poorest countries, because we know there are those who are having a very clear vision and to encourage this to continue. As a greater unity and courage is indeed essential. I mean, these minerals are still here with us. The energy of the youth is here with us. The future is still here with us. But it will not happen unless we all wake up, unless we all keep the puppets accountable, unless we take the mandate of making sure that Africa becomes independent. Let's follow Ibrahim Traore. Let's follow the Sahel. Let's follow every Pan-African leader who wants the best out of Africa. Let us stand proud. Let us stand strong. And let us reclaim the African dream, because this is Africa and Africa is Marwa. If you truly believe that Africa is ours, then you already know that this is our continent and Africa is now. Anyway, that brings me to the end of discussion. What do you think about these top 10 poorest countries in Africa, and what do they need to do? Because the livelihood of these fellow Africans really need to change, and they really need to enjoy the resources that we have in Africa. Tell me what you think, and tell me what do you want us to do as Africans, so that we can change the narrative, because we don't want to be talking about poverty again, but we want to talk about success. Anyway, Africa is Marwa closes, and I am hoping to see you in the next video. Please keep the spirit going, be motivated, because we have to make sure that we take the mandate of Africa. See you in our next video. Bye bye.
I'm a great believer in unity. I believe in the old adage, unity is strength. I mean, this is truly, it is strength, and the human race would be much stronger if we were united. We would get rid of a lot of problems in the world if we could be united, and therefore the human race must move towards unity. And continents like mine, a country like Tanzania must move towards greater unity, continents must move towards greater unity, and the human race must move towards unity.
It's African Union now. There is no time to waste. We must unite or we perish.